So thank you guys for sharing your costumes. That was cool. I like seeing Halloween costumes. They're pretty fun. So there's a few of you who were Queen Elsa. So Ubeli was Queen Elsa. Who else was Queen Elsa? Oh, Miranda was going to be Queen Elsa later. And I saw a Queen Elsa doll on my video. But Queen Elsa has ice powers, right? And ice is the solid form. Oh, Michaela has the Queen Elsa doll. It's the solid form of water, right? And water moves in a cycle. That's cool. So the water cycle really doesn't have an end or a beginning, right? It keeps moving from one step to another. There really isn't a middle or a beginning part of it. But an important thing that makes the water cycle keep going is something that was very important during photosynthesis. So can we think of something that is both very important for photosynthesis and very important for the water cycle? I saw Gael's hand shoot right up. Let's see what Gael's got to say. Gael, what do you think?
Oh, I was going to show my costume.
Oh, okay. All right, you came in late, so let's do it. What's your costume, buddy?
I have...
Ooh, you're a friend of Thor's. You are Steve Rogers, who is also known as Captain America, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I like it. Cool. All right, so let's see if anyone has an idea for my question. So my question is this. There is an important piece for photosynthesis. So if we think about the three things that are in photosynthesis, and then there's an important part of the water cycle, and they share one piece in common. What do we think that might be? So you need one of these things for both of them. So this thing is very important for both the photosynthesis and the water cycle. What if I give you guys a hint? Let's try that. So the hint is this. So the thing is important for both photosynthesis and the water cycle. It is what makes, it turns night into day. It warms you up when you stand out in it. Does that help anybody? Oh, Miranda, let's see. Miranda, what do you think that is?
Sun.
The sun. Yeah, the sun is one of the very important parts of photosynthesis. And then the sun is what heats up the earth so that water can evaporate. If water couldn't evaporate, we would lose a very important part of the water cycle. So the water cycle here has 4 parts in this picture. So the 4 parts are condensation, precipitation, collection, and then evaporation. And evaporation is driven by the sun. If there wasn't the sun in the sky to heat up the earth, evaporation would not happen. The water would not turn into a vapor, and then it wouldn't be able to turn into clouds, and then those clouds wouldn't be able to rain, and then that rain wouldn't be able to collect in rivers and lakes and in the ocean. So that whole water cycle would get broken. So even though the water cycle doesn't stop, it moves from one step to another. If you take out something like the sun, so if you were an evil supervillain and you blocked out the sun or turned off the sun, then you would stop the water cycle, and water would just stay in one spot. It wouldn't cycle. It wouldn't move from one stage to another. So obviously that would be a bad thing. And I'm starting to think that the sun is pretty important, right? I think it is, because we need the sun for photosynthesis. We need it for the water cycle. So definitely a lot of things on Earth are affected by the sun. So let's watch this short little video here that tells us, or it's going to try and answer the question, where does water come from? And I think we're starting to get a pretty good idea that the water cycle, the whole process there is where it comes from. But let's see what SciShow for Kids has to teach us.
When you're thirsty, nothing is better than a nice cool drink of water. Oh, and it looks like my plant could use a drink of water too. Did you ever stop to think about where our water comes from? Sure, when you get a drink of water, it might come from a faucet or a bottle. And I get my flower here water from a watering can. But you know what? The water that comes out of the faucet and the watering can may once have been part of a cloud, or a snowflake, or even the ocean. Awesome, right? And it's because of something called the water cycle. Now, a cycle is a set of steps that repeat over and over. When you get to the last step in a cycle, you go back to the beginning and go through the steps again. For example, every year there are 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And when winter's over, of the cycle. In the water cycle, all of the water on Earth goes through a set of steps that repeat over and over. Let's start with a step in our water cycle where we open up our umbrellas. That's right, Squeaks, rain. Rain is water that falls from the sky. Some rainwater soaks into the ground, but a lot of it flows into little creeks and streams and then ends up in rivers, lakes, and eventually the ocean. And then something really interesting happens. Some of this water changes. You might have noticed that after it rains, some water is left on the ground, like in puddles that you can jump in. But what happens to all that water? It seems like it's there one day, but then after a little while, it's gone. Well, that water didn't just disappear. When the sun comes out and the
So let's see. I want to ask the question. So she's talking about, and she used the word where it said the water disappears. Does anybody, this happened with us last time, I think, where I can't do anything. Oh no. Can you guys still hear me though? I think you can. I just can't unmute you guys. All right. But we do know what that's called. The water doesn't disappear, right? It doesn't just go away and never come back. It evaporates. And we saw that when we looked at our experiment with the salt water. We saw the water went up and evaporated and then left the salt behind. So let's see what SciShow for Kids still has. And we just did kind of talk about it, so I think it's pretty easy to answer. But my question is, she was talking about water disappearing. But we're scientists and we don't use words like disappear because that's just magic, right? It's not a real thing. What's the word that we use to describe when that water goes away? We're not going to say disappear, but what's the word that we use? Emma, do you know that word?
Evaporate.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma. That is very good. Evaporate. So some people might say the water disappears, but we're scientists and we know the process of the water cycle, and it evaporates. So without that evaporation happening, we wouldn't get things like cloud and the rain. So let's finish watching the SciShow for Kids video, and we'll see what they have to say.
Together. And like the gases that make up air, you can't see water vapor gas. When the sun shines on rivers, lakes, and oceans, some of the water changes into water vapor. And then the water vapor goes up high, very high up into the sky. And it gets pretty cold up there. So when the water vapor gets high enough, it starts to get cool. And as water vapor cools down, it changes back into little drops of liquid water. You can actually see water vapor change into water drops right at home. All you need is a mirror or window and your mouth. Put your face close to the mirror or window. Open your mouth nice and wide and breathe out. What happens? The glass gets foggy. That's because there's water vapor in your warm breath. And when the water vapor in your breath touches the cool glass, it changes into teeny tiny droplets. A lot of the droplets together make the glass look cloudy. And up in the sky, a lot of water droplets together make clouds. When there's a lot of water in a cloud, the cloud starts to get darker. White fluffy clouds start to turn gray. And as the clouds get grayer, the water in them gets heavier. When the water gets too heavy, it falls right back out of the clouds as rain. And rain is where we started in the cycle. We made it all the way back to the beginning. Now the water cycle can start all over again. All the water on our great big Earth goes through this same cycle over and over. It falls to the ground as rain or snow, and soon the water ends up in a river, lake, or ocean. From there, it heats up and turns into vapor. And when the vapor rises into the sky and cools off, it comes right back down. So the water that you drink and the water that's in my watering can right now might once have been part of a raindrop that fell into the ocean on the other side of the world. Think of
That's kind of neat to think about that when you get your big drink of water, the water that you're drinking might have come from the other side of the planet. It might have evaporated out of someone's swimming pool in China. Who knows? So I always think that's kind of interesting to think about, that you are kind of connected to everyone in the world with all this water that's being recycled over and over again. So and she talked a little bit about an easy experiment to do. You don't even need anything except for your body. But I have a question for you guys. So when I wake up in the morning and I go and I walk my doggy before the sun comes up, and I go take my dog, his name's Bogo. He's a cute little guy. And we go for a walk, and I put my mask on, and then I put my glasses on. Lately, and especially this week, when I go for a walk, my glasses fog up. I can't see out of my glasses. Does anybody have an idea of what's happening? Does anybody know what's happening? What's happening to my glasses? Let's see. Zoe's got her hand up. Zoe, what do you think is happening to my glasses?
Your glasses got fogged.
They did, but how did that happen though? My glasses definitely fogged up. I can guarantee that's what happened. Does anybody know why that's happening? Let's see. Because it didn't used to happen. So like a few weeks ago, that was not a problem. I could go take my little guy for a walk, and we would even go for some pretty long walks, and my glasses wouldn't fog up. So does anybody know what's happening? Why are my glasses getting fogged up? Why is it so hard for me to see? What do you think, Christian?
There's a bunch of wind.
Maybe. It is windier a little bit now, but when I go in the morning, it's usually not windy at all. So I think we can rule that out. We'll cross that off our list. That's a good guess, but I don't think it's the wind. What do we think it is? Let's see. Camila's got her hand up. Camila, what do you think?
The clouds.
Maybe it's the clouds. But if I take off my mask, my glasses don't fog up. So when I'm walking and I go, oh, I can't see. So I take off my mask and then all of a sudden my glasses, I can see again. Go ahead, Camila. You're still unmuted. What do you think?
That when you're breathing with your mask,
Ooh. Uh-huh.
like when you fog up your mirror.
Exactly. Okay. So let's all try this real quick. So let's put your hand out in front of your mouth. And we're not going to blow like we're blowing out a birthday cake, right? We're not going to do that. We're going to puff. We're going to and try to do a really long one. And tell me what you feel on your hand. Hopefully you have good breath. If you don't have good breath, if you ate just a bunch of onions or something, you're like, my goodness gracious, I need a piece of gum. Bailey, what did you feel on your hand?
Wind.
Yeah, you felt air, right, coming out of your mouth. Did it feel any different?
Yeah, it's like getting wet on your hand.
It got a little wet. Did that happen to anyone else too? Yeah. So the water vapor is in your breath. When you breathe out, you can't help it. There is water vapor in your breath. And what was happening is my glasses. So my glasses have plastic lenses, and the plastic cools off very quickly. And so my glasses are actually really pretty cold in the morning. And when my hot breath comes out of my mouth, and usually if I'm not having a mask on, it just goes out and away from me, and it's not a problem. But if I have my mask on and my mask doesn't fit perfectly over my nose, some of my hot breath goes up and touches my cold lenses. Now, what is that called? So Camila said that's just like when you go to a mirror, like in your bathroom. So if you wake up first thing in the morning and it's nice and cool in your house and you push your breath out on your mirror, it fogs up. What is that called? What step in the water cycle is that? Do you guys know? Is it the precipitation? Is it the collection? Is it the evaporation? Let's take a look at our picture. Maybe that'll help us. So let's take a look at our picture. So it's probably not the evaporation part, right? Because the water is appearing, not disappearing, right? So the water is showing up again. It's probably not precipitation because the water, I'm not spitting, hopefully. Spit isn't coming out of my mouth, so that's not it. And then the collection, that's not really happening. I don't have like a bowl of water that's coming off of my glasses. It's just a little tiny bit of water. So what step do we think it is? So I'm pretty sure it's not evaporation. It's not precipitation. It's not collection. What's the other step that it could be? Do we know? Well, I'll save you guys because we're out of time. It's condensation. So that's what happens when you go and you fog up a mirror with your breath, with your hot breath. It's condensation. So try that this weekend. It should be nice and cool still in the mornings, and give that a try. Okay, my friends, that is the end for our class this Friday. It was really great to see all of your costumes. I will see you again on. So these are the African wild dogs at the Living Desert, which is here in Palm Desert, California. It's a really fantastic place. And we were lucky enough to go there on Halloween. And you can see they've put out a pumpkin here for the African wild dogs. And on the pumpkin is written or carved the letters E and N. And that is because the African wild dogs are endangered. And they're mostly endangered because of human activity, and mostly humans kill them because the African wild dogs will attack livestock and are a bit of a nuisance. So they're poisoned and hunted. But inside this pumpkin is a bunch of meat. And we watched them a little bit earlier put big bags of ground beef inside that pumpkin. And we can see the zookeeper there is getting ready to open a gate to let the African wild dogs out. And there they go. And there's some meat over to the left also, and some other places, but this big tree's in my way, so I couldn't film it very well. But it was pretty interesting. They fought a little bit. There were some yelps and yips. They didn't really fight hard because there was a lot of meat for them to eat. But they did put a lot in that pumpkin also. And they told us you can tell which dog is the dominant dog by the way they hold their tail. And I had a hard time spotting it. Maybe you'll be able to see it. The dog that most often holds their tail straight up is the dominant, or what they call the alpha dog. And I see one there who's up, but I see a few others. Well, they dragged that pumpkin around for a while, and I didn't record all of it, but they ate the whole thing. They ate all the meat. They ate every single piece of the pumpkin, even the stem. So here are the African wild dogs after they ate the pumpkin, after they ate all the meat. You can barely tell where they're at, but they're all lying down in one big clump. They're asleep. So this is the Mexican wolf, and they are my favorite ones at the Living Desert. And you can see how fast they are, how fast they run around their little enclosure. And I've asked zookeepers before if this is all the space that they have, and they say no. There's a whole big section back there that they can go into later. They can take them off into that section, so they don't have just this small space to run around in. But these guys are going to get their own pumpkin treat too. But while I was there, they never figured out where it was or how to get to it. So here's this guy. He can smell it. He knows where the pumpkin is. But I think he's having a hard time figuring out how to get there. Because there's this big puddle here. And he seemed like he didn't want to go in it. But I've seen him splash around in the puddle before. So here are the zebras. They're kind of far away from the fence. And I learned a good reason why they don't really want the zebras coming close to people. Because zebras are jerks. They try and bite you and kick you. So you don't want them anywhere near you. This is the giraffe portion of the African savanna here. And we can see they've got a couple other animals besides giraffes. But it's mostly the giraffes that people come here to see at this part of the Living Desert. And the giraffes are the tallest living land mammal. and some of them can reach up to 30 feet. And that's unusual right there, to see two giraffes sitting. Usually the giraffes spend their whole day standing. Here's a little guy sneaking a snack over the fence. So you can see they spend a lot of time eating. And that is an interesting fact about the giraffes. They spend between 16 and 20 hours of the day eating. And here's two younger giraffes that we are feeding. And their tongues are very long and can grab things. Their tongues also have sunscreen on them to keep them from getting sunburned, because they stick their tongues out so much during the day because they spend so much time eating. The giraffes are really, really neat. And if you ever get a chance to go to the living desert, getting a chance to feed them is really exciting, because on this day there were a lot of people. But if you go on a day where they don't have very many people, you can spend a pretty decent amount of time feeding them, and it is really neat to see them this close. I hope you enjoyed this little bonus look at the living desert, and if you get a chance to ever get there, I really recommend it. Maybe one of these days when we're back in regular school, we can go on a field trip. I vote for that.